My father, David, was a train driver, while my mother, Sarah, worked as an office secretary. They already had my brother, Michael, their pride and joy, who was 5 years old when Mom discovered she was pregnant with me. She found out late, just as I began moving inside her. Another child wasn't part of their plan. One was enough, they said. I remember overhearing my mother tell my father one night, recounting the story for what must have been the 100th time. But the doctor said it would be risky for my health. We had no choice, she sighed. I was the sickly child, always battling one illness after another, colds, flu, ear infections, you name it. Mom had to take so much time off work to care for me that she eventually lost her job. I vividly recall the day she came home after getting fired, looking at me with a mix of disdain and resignation. "Well, Amber, I hope you're happy now," she said. The only bright spot in those early years was my grandmother, my father's mother. While my mother barely touched me when I was sick, Grandma would sweep into our home like a warm breeze, bringing soup and kisses even when I was contagious. "Come here, my sweet girl," she'd say, wrapping me in her arms while my mother stood in the doorway, shaking her head. "Mom, you'll catch whatever she has," Dad warned. Grandma would just laugh. "Love is the best medicine," she'd say, kissing my forehead. She helped us financially, which was the only reason we managed to stay afloat during those difficult times. But my mother often reminded me how much of a burden I was on the family's finances. Michael was everything I wasn't: healthy, athletic, the apple of our parents' eyes. While I spent my days in bed or at doctors' offices, he was out playing soccer, winning medals, and making our parents proud. They would beam at him during dinner, asking about his day, his friends, and his dreams, while I pushed my food around my plate, feeling invisible. Then, almost like magic, everything changed when I turned 8. My health improved dramatically, as if my body finally decided to cooperate. No more constant illnesses, no more missed school days, and no more doctor visits. Mom could return to work, although her career never fully recovered to what it had been before. After I completed my first month without getting sick, she sighed with relief. "Maybe now we can have some normalcy around here," she said. But what I learned about normalcy was not what I had hoped. It just meant I was healthy enough to fade into the background of our family portrait, a shadow behind the golden child that was my brother. Grandma continued to support our family financially, ensuring we had everything we needed. But what truly showcased her love was when she established education funds for both Michael and me. "Education is the key to everything in life," she would tell us during our weekend visits, her eyes sparkling as she spoke about our future. "With a good education, you can achieve anything you dream of." I spent a lot of time at Grandma's house, not because my parents wanted me to bond with her, but because they craved time alone with Michael. It became such a routine that I kept a toothbrush and pajamas at her place. "Your parents are taking Michael to his soccer tournament this weekend," Grandma would say, trying to hide the sadness in her voice. "We'll have a girls' weekend, just you and me." I remember one particular Saturday when I was watching TV at her house. Mom called to say they would be late picking me up because Michael's basketball game had gone into overtime. "They won," Grandma exclaimed after hanging up the phone. "Your brother scored the winning points." "That's nice," I mumbled, already used to hearing about Michael's achievements. "What would you like to do, sweetheart?" Grandma asked, sitting beside me. "You never talk about your interests." That was when I broke down, revealing my longing for ice skating classes. I had seen the ice rink at the mall and couldn't stop dreaming about gliding across that smooth, shiny surface. "Mom says they can't afford it," I explained, picking at a loose thread on my sleeve. "But they just paid for Michael's new soccer gear and basketball shoes last week." A few days later, I mustered the courage to ask about singing lessons. There was a choir at school, and the teacher said I had a nice voice. "Honey, we spend all our extra money on your brother's activities," Mom said, barely glancing up from her phone. "He's really showing promise in sports. We need to invest in his future." "But Grandma set up education funds for both of us," I argued. "Can't we use some of that?" Ted stepped in then, his voice firm. "That money is for college, Amber. Michael needs these activities for his college applications. You understand that, right?" But I didn't understand, not really. I never understood why Michael got to explore every activity he wanted: soccer, basketball, swimming, track, while I was left on the sidelines. It baffled me that our parents attended every one of his games but never once asked what I might like to do. Why did being their firstborn make him so special while I felt so easily forgotten? This pattern only intensified as we moved through elementary school and into middle school. Each time there was a choice between Michael's activities and anything I might desire, he would always come out on top. While I cheered for him from the bleachers, sharing proud moments on social media, I would sit alone at Grandma's house, finishing my homework. When Michael was accepted into the most prestigious college in the neighboring state, our parents were elated. Money wasn't an issue. They said they would make it work because this was about their son's future. We're so blessed to have such a brilliant boy, Mom gushed at his send-off party, beaming with pride as she snapped photos for Facebook. I stood in the corner, holding a plate of cake I had no desire to eat, watching them celebrate him while Dad had his arm around Michael, both grinning widely. Then came the weekend visits. Every other weekend, like clockwork, they would pack their bags and drive 6 hours to see him, leaving me behind at Grandma's. I'd scroll through my phone, witnessing their adventures unfold on social media, photo after photo, video after video of Mom, Dad, and Michael at restaurants, football games, and exploring the city together. They looked so happy, so complete, a perfect family of 3. The captions stunned the most. Weekend with our pride and joy. Best son ever, making memories with the light of our lives. Family time with our only hope for the future. After months of this, I finally couldn't take it anymore. As they packed for another trip to see Michael, I confronted them. Why do you pretend I don't exist? My voice trembled. You never mention me in your posts. You never take me with you. It's like you wish I wasn't here. Mom barely looked up from her suitcase. There you go again, always complaining. I'm not complaining. You should be grateful you're even here. She cut me off, her tone sharp. Or did you forget I wanted to have an abortion? The words struck me like a slap. Dad stood there, engrossed in his phone, as if Mom had just said something cruelly devastating to their daughter. In that moment, everything fell into place. I had spent years trying to rationalize their treatment of me. Maybe they were stressed about money, overwhelmed with 2 kids, or unsure how to show love equally. But it was simpler than that. They just didn't like me. They didn't want me. I was the child they felt forced to have, the one who had disrupted their ideal family of 3. Standing in our living room, watching them prepare for another weekend with their only child, I felt something within me shatter. But instead of the expected pain, it was more like a chain snapping, freeing me from the desperate need to earn their love. Michael's 20th birthday was another grand event, just like everything else in his life. Mom and Dad not only drove to his college town but also invited his best friends from high school, renting out an entire restaurant for a surprise party. You'll stay at Grandma's that weekend, Mom informed me, making it clear there was no room for discussion. We'll be too busy with party arrangements. I watched the entire celebration unfold through a live stream on Instagram. Mom was in her element, capturing every moment. Michael's shocked expression as he entered the restaurant, the cheers from his friends, Dad's emotional speech about how proud he was of his only child. But this time, as I sat on Grandma's couch, the familiar ache in my chest had faded away. Would you like me to turn it off? Grandma asked, noticing my gaze fixed on the screen. No, I replied, surprising us both. I'm actually okay. And I was. Somewhere along the way, the pain of being forgotten had softened into acceptance. I still had Grandma, who showed me what real love felt like. She didn't need social media posts to prove she cared. She just did. 2 years later, when I was 17, Michael graduated from college and dropped a bombshell. He was getting married. His bride-to-be, Patricia, was 35, divorced, and had 2 kids of her own. And she happened to be wealthy. Can you believe our luck? Mom squealed at dinner the night Michael brought Patricia over. Our son has found such a wonderful, established woman. Patricia sat at our dining table, draped in designer clothes and sparkling jewelry, while her children entertained themselves on high-end tablets. Michael looked at her as if he'd hit the jackpot, which in our parents' eyes, he certainly had. We're going to throw you the most amazing wedding, Dad declared, already pulling up venues on his phone. Nothing but the best for our boy and his new family. The plans became more extravagant by the day, premium venues, gourmet catering, a live band, ice sculptures, the works. The costs just kept climbing higher. One evening, after hearing them discuss flying in a famous chef for the wedding, I finally asked the question that had been nagging at me. Where are you getting all this money from? I asked during dinner. This must cost a fortune. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance that I couldn't quite interpret. That's none of your concern, Amber, Mom said dismissively, waving her hand as if to shoo away an annoying fly. The important thing is making a good impression on Patricia. This wedding needs to be perfect. I looked down at my plate, the all too familiar feeling of being an outsider in my own family washing over me again. But this time, there was something else, a nagging suspicion that they were hiding something. It was sudden. I was deep in exam preparation when Mom called, her voice trembling as she delivered the news. Dad had been in a train accident. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, he was still my father. The hospital corridors were eerily quiet when I arrived. I found Dad's room easily. Mom was already there, hovering by his bedside. Dad was awake, propped up against white pillows, his face bruised but not severely damaged. His eyes were glued to his phone screen, scrolling restlessly. "Hi, Dad," I said softly. He barely glanced up. "Has Michael called?" he asked, completely ignoring my presence. "Not yet, honey," Mom replied. "I'm sure he will soon." I stood there awkwardly, feeling like an intruder in the scene. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence between us. Finally, Mom turned to me, her face twisted with worry. Not for Dad's health, as I would soon learn, but for something else entirely. "Your father made a mistake," she said bluntly. "He violated some safety protocols at work. The company is refusing to cover his medical expenses or pay any compensation." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his bed, still staring at his phone. "We need money for his treatment," Mom continued, her tone heavy. "A lot of money." Without thinking, I blurted out, "What about my education fund? The one Grandma set up. We could use that." "I don't mind. Dad's health is more important than college." I expected gratitude, or at least some acknowledgement of my offer, but instead, Mom let out a sharp, bitter laugh that made me flinch. "Oh, Amber," she said, shaking her head. "That money's long gone. We used it for Michael's wedding. We needed to make an impression on Patricia's family." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, trying to process what I had just heard. What I was hearing hit me hard. They had taken my education fund and spent it on Michael's wedding, and now Mom expected me to get a job after graduation. "Take out a loan," she declared. "Your father needs this treatment, and you need to help pay for it." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stared at my parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect me in that sterile hospital room filled with the smell of disinfectant and disappointment. In that moment, I finally understood the full extent of their betrayal. "How could you spend my education money?" I demanded, my voice rising despite the hospital setting. "That money wasn't yours to spend. Grandma gave it to you specifically for my future." Mom's face hardened into that familiar look of contempt I had seen so many times before, but this time, instead of shrinking back, I stood my ground. "You have no right to demand answers from us," she spat. "You should be grateful you're even alive to ask questions. Or have you forgotten that I wanted to abort you?" The words hung in the air like poison. I had heard them use my almost abortion against me countless times before, but this time was different. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I ran past the nurse's station, down the sterile corridors, through the automatic doors, and into the parking lot. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely pull my phone from my pocket. Through tears, I managed to dial Grandma's number. "Sweetheart," her warm voice came through the speaker. "What's wrong?" Everything spilled out in a rush. The accident, Dad's treatment, my stolen education fund, and Mom's cruel words. My voice kept breaking, but Grandma listened patiently to every word. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before she spoke, her tone steely with a determination I had never heard before. "Pack your things," she said firmly. "All of them. You're moving in with me right now. I'm so sorry I didn't step in sooner." I drove home in a daze, pulled out my suitcases, and started throwing in everything I owned: clothes, books, the few precious mementos I had collected over the years. I was halfway through emptying my dresser when I heard the front door slam. "What do you think you're doing?" Mom's voice cut through the room like a knife. I didn't stop packing. "I'm leaving. I'm going to live with Grandma." "Oh no, you're not," she said, stepping between me and my suitcase. "Your father needs someone to take care of him at the hospital. I'm exhausted from all this. You need to step up and do your part." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that surprised even me. "My part? Michael's your precious golden child. Why isn't he here helping? Where's your perfect son now?" Mom's face crumpled slightly, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger in her eyes. Fear. "Michael, he can't help right now," she admitted, sinking onto my bed. Things aren't good with Patricia. She doesn't give him any money. She just shows him off at parties like he's some trophy husband. And now, she took a shaky breath. Now she's threatening to throw him out. He has nowhere else to go. He'll have to come back home until he finds a job. A job? I scoffed. Michael's never worked a day in his life. How long do you think that will take? That's why we need you, Mom said, her voice taking on the manipulative tone I knew so well. Your father needs treatment now. We can't wait for Michael to find work. You need to help us. I zipped up my suitcase with finality. No, I'm done. You stole my education fund. You've treated me like garbage my entire life. I'm not going to take out loans to fix your mistakes. I'm not putting my life on hold to take care of the father who never cared about me. I'm done. Amber, you can't. Watch me. I grabbed my suitcases, walked past her frozen figure, and headed for the door. At the threshold, I turned back one last time. Try asking your only child for help. I'm sure he'll figure something out. The drive to Grandma's house was a blur, but with each mile, I felt lighter. By the time I pulled into her driveway, I was crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. It took less than 3 days for my mother to turn my departure into a social media spectacle. The same Facebook account that had pretended I didn't exist for years suddenly couldn't stop talking about me. Heartbroken, her first post began. Our youngest daughter has abandoned us in our time of need while my husband lies in a hospital bed. She refuses to help her own parents. Instead, she's run away to live with her grandmother. How did we raise such a selfish child? The comments started pouring in immediately. Distant relatives and family friends who'd only seen the carefully curated version of our family life were quick to condemn me. But then came the other voices, the ones who had seen the truth over the years. My cousin Emma commented, "Are you going to tell everyone how you ignored her for years, or should I?" My Aunt Rachel chimed in, "Funny how you never mentioned Amber in your posts until you needed something from her." Then came my Aunt Lisa's post. As Mom's sister and a family law attorney, her words carried extra weight. I need to make this clear. Since you're ignoring my private messages, I'll say it here. You're publicly defaming your minor daughter. Amber is just 17, and by law, you are still responsible for her care and well-being. The fact that she felt forced to leave home, and that you're now launching a social media campaign against her, could catch the attention of Child Protective Services. Is that really what you want? Because trust me, if they investigate, they'll discover far more than just your Facebook posts. After that, Mom deleted her original post. But she wasn't finished. The next morning, she barged into Grandma's house without so much as a knock. "Mother," she said, addressing Grandma and completely ignoring me. "You need to talk some sense into Amber. This little rebellion has gone on long enough." Grandma set her coffee cup down with a deliberate calm I'd never seen from her before. "Rebellion?" she asked quietly. "Is that what you call it when a child finally stands up to years of mistreatment?" Mom scoffed. "We gave her everything." "Everything?" Grandma's voice rose slightly. "You gave everything to Michael. You spent Amber's education fund, money I specifically set aside for her future, on his wedding. A wedding that was nothing but a spectacle to impress a woman who's now threatening to throw him out. You needed to think about both your children's futures. Instead," Grandma continued, "you burned through money like there was no tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is here now, isn't it? And no, I won't be paying for David's treatment." Mom left in tears, but they were tears of frustration, not remorse. Her manipulation had failed. When the door slammed behind her, Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. Within a month of my departure, my parents were forced to sell our family home to cover Dad's medical expenses. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Then Michael showed up at their new doorstep. Patricia had finally had enough of his lazy, entitled behavior and kicked him out with nothing but his designer clothes and the expensive watch she'd bought him for their wedding. When he arrived, expecting the royal treatment he'd always received, my parents tried to keep up the facade. I heard through family gossip that Mom was still cooking his favorite meals while Dad made excuses for why Michael couldn't find work right away. But reality has a way of breaking through even the strongest denial. "Did you hear?" Grandma told me one morning over breakfast. "Your mother finally told Michael he needs to get a job. He insisted they owed him a comfortable life since they'd never prepared him for the real world, which led to a huge fight. Meanwhile, I was building my own life. I graduated high school with good grades. Not that my parents noticed." Grandma helped me enroll in the local community college's accounting program. It wasn't the prestigious university I once dreamed of, but it was a solid education that would lead to a stable career. I even landed an internship at a small accounting firm downtown. The pay wasn't much, but the experience was invaluable. My supervisor, Mrs. Chen, actually appreciated my attention to detail, something my parents had always dismissed as excessive perfectionism. Living with Grandma was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. We developed a comfortable routine, sharing breakfast before I headed off to classes or work, and enjoying dinner together in the evenings where we'd talk about our days. She actually listened when I spoke, asked questions about my life, and celebrated my small victories. Then came the day she asked me to accompany her to her lawyer's office. "Just some paperwork I need to update," she said casually. I sat in the elegant office trying not to fidget as her lawyer, Mr. Peterson, pulled out a document. "I'm updating my will," Grandma announced. "I want to make sure everything's properly arranged." My heart stopped as Mr. Peterson began to read. Grandma was leaving everything to me, the house, her savings, even her collection of antique jewelry. "Are you sure?" I whispered after we left the office. "What about Dad and Michael?" Grandma took my hand. "Your father and brother have taken enough from you. I won't let them take anything more. This is your future I'm protecting." I hugged her tight, fighting back tears. "I won't tell them," I promised. "Good," she smiled. "Let them figure out their own futures for once." That night, as I lay in bed in what had truly become my room, not just the space I occupied in someone else's house, I reflected on how life had changed. My parents and Michael were struggling in their small apartment, fighting over money and blame. Mom had stopped posting on social media entirely. Dad was back at work, but demoted to a desk job. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I had a grandmother who loved me, a future I was building for myself, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly wanted. Sometimes, the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to stay with. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away and build something new, something better.